In the closing chapters of World War II, as Nazi Germany faced imminent defeat, a final, desperate weapon was unleashed. It didn't roar across the sky like a bomber, it didn't fire from a gun or roll in on tanks, it came from the edge of space. It was fast, invisible, unstoppable. This was the V-2 rocket, the world's first ballistic missile, and one of the most terrifying innovations of the 20th century. Developed in secrecy and deployed with fury, the V-2 represented the deadly intersection of cutting-edge science and total war, a technological masterpiece and a humanitarian disaster all at once. Before it became a weapon, it was an idea, a dream even. Wernher von Braun, the man behind the V-2, didn't start as a weapons designer. He was a visionary obsessed with reaching space. In the early 1930s, his experiments in rocketry attracted attention, not from scientists, but from soldiers. The German army saw potential, not for exploration, but for domination. And so dreams of Mars gave way to the Reich's hunger for retribution. In 1937, construction began on Peenemünde, a secret rocket research facility along the Baltic Sea. There, von Braun and his team began developing a liquid-fueled missile system that would become the Aggregate series. Years of work and thousands of test failures led to the creation of Aggregate 4, later renamed the V-2. The V-2 was unlike anything the world had seen, a towering machine. 14 meters tall, weighing nearly 13 metric tons. It used ethanol and liquid oxygen to generate 25 tons of thrust, propelling it to altitudes of nearly 200 kilometers. That's technically space. It flew over 300 kilometers in under 5 minutes. Its one-ton warhead hit with terrifying force. By the time you heard it, it had already exploded. There was no defense. Anti-aircraft guns couldn't touch it. Radar tracking was useless. Fighter planes couldn't reach it. The V-2's silence was its deadliest feature. If you're fascinated by weapons that blurred the line between science and war, make sure to subscribe to Weapon Archives. Here, we bring forgotten firepower and iconic arms back into the light. The first V-2 rockets were launched against Paris and London in September 1944. British intelligence initially denied the attacks were rocket strikes, partly to avoid panic. But the destruction was undeniable. Concrete buildings flattened, streets cratered, civilians killed without warning. Over 500 V-2s would eventually strike London alone. Other cities weren't spared. Antwerp was bombarded with over 1,600 V-2 rockets. The port was vital for Allied supplies, and the Germans knew it. Their aim wasn't just military, it was psychological, to terrify, to destabilize. The impact was horrifying, but tactically the rocket was a failure. Its guidance system was crude, its accuracy questionable. It cost more to build a single V-2 than it cost the Allies to produce an entire fleet of bombers. For every rocket launched, the Nazis hoped for military impact, but often delivered only random devastation. Still, the Nazi propaganda machine celebrated it as a game-changing Wunderwaffe, a wonder weapon, a symbol that the Reich could still strike from the heavens. But behind the wonder was horror. Production of the V-2 was moved underground after Allied bombers destroyed Peenemünde in Operation Hydra. The new facility, Mittelwerk, was buried inside the Kohnstein mountain. It was a factory built on the backs of the dead. Tens of thousands of forced laborers, most of them concentration camp prisoners, worked and died there. Starvation, beatings, collapses, and executions were routine. Over 20,000 people perished building a weapon that ultimately killed fewer than half that number in combat. It's one of history's darkest ironies. More people died building the V-2 than from its use. This isn't just military history, it's a moral reckoning. And here at Weapon Archives, we're committed to telling both sides of every weapon's story. As the war ended, the Allies raced to seize the remnants of Germany's rocket program. The Americans launched Operation Paperclip, bringing over 1,500 German scientists, technicians, and engineers to the US, including Werner von Braun himself. Officially, they were brought to advance American technology. Unofficially, many had direct ties to war crimes, their records were sanitized, their pasts buried beneath Cold War urgency. Von Braun didn't just survive, he thrived. In less than 2 decades, he was running NASA's rocket program. The same man who designed a weapon to strike London was now building the Saturn V rocket to send astronauts to the moon. On the other side of the Iron Curtain, Soviet engineers reverse-engineered the V-2, launching their own rocket program. It eventually led to Sputnik, Yuri Gagarin, and the militarization of space. So when we look at the night sky, at satellites, at GPS, even at the legacy of the moon landing, we're seeing shadows cast by the V-2. It was both the final act of one war and the opening scene of another, the Cold War. The V-2 changed how wars would be fought. It introduced the concept of standoff weaponry. It paved the way for intercontinental ballistic missiles. It made future wars faster, more distant, and more impersonal. But the legacy of the V-2 is more than technological. It's psychological. It's a story of ambition corrupted by ideology, of scientists trading moral ground for scientific opportunity, of a weapon so advanced it felt alien, but was built with hands in chains. Weapons shape history, but they also shape memory. And the V-2 stands as a monument to both brilliance and brutality. If you're still watching, you're part of a growing archive of thinkers, researchers, and curious minds who don't just want to know what happened, but why it mattered. Support Weapon Archives by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the weapons that defined centuries. Comment below, should we cover more Cold War rocketry, or take it further back to ancient siege engines? Until next time, remember, every weapon tells a story. Some end in victory, others end in silence. And some, like the V-2, echo through space, history, and the choices we still live with today. This is Weapon Archives, preserving the power and the price of the past.